with the Denver Nuggets, who last season won 57 games, ended up being the second seed in the Western Conference, tied for number one with Oklahoma City, who we'll talk about later. Defeated the Lakers round one in 5 games, that then fell to the Timberwolves in a great 7-game series. And in this offseason, they lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a key starter, and they signed veterans Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric to kind of fill out their bench. Here is a look at their roster. Nick, let's start with you. What is a question that you have for the Nuggets heading into the season?
Well, I think the biggest question has to be, is Christian Braun going to be able to fill KCP's shoes? Is he ready to step into the starting lineup on a championship level competing team? And, you can't really predict that. You kind of just got to wait and see what's going to happen there. I think that's obviously the biggest question heading into the year for them. The second biggest question for me is, what is Russ going to look like in this offense? And what's his role going to be coming off the bench? Or maybe like he finds his way, like, if Christian Braun isn't panning out as a starter, could Russ maybe slide in there next to Jamal Murray and MPJ and crack that lineup? I don't know. I don't know what Mike Malone's going to do. I know that he's going to want to win. And actually, while I'm talking, I might as well just go on to my third biggest question, because I've heard some rumors about some butting of heads between front office and coaching staff there in Denver. I don't really have anything to back it up, or I haven't really heard specifics, but all I heard was that the front office and Mike Malone don't always see eye to eye. And, that's not really a good formula for winning championships.
Yeah, and you wonder what that could potentially be about, because, like, right now, when you look at this Nuggets roster and, the areas that they had to fill, I mean, there really wasn't much they could do. They're already paying Murray, Jokic, Porter. They just signed Murray to an extension, which I know is something that we were waiting on for a while. We seem to talk about it every episode, like, why haven't they extended Jamal Murray? But to me, it really doesn't seem like the Nuggets could have really done much more as far as the offseason. I think that they did a decent job signing guys like Westbrook and Saric. I like the Saric pickup because he's a guy that, when he was playing overseas before he even came to the league, he's always been a pretty good playmaker at that, center position. And the Nuggets really haven't had a guy that can kind of do that, run the same offense like they do with Jokic. There was that half a year where they had DeMarcus Cousins as their backup center, and he played very well in that. But they, having Saric in there, I think will help a lot. Jackson, Russell Westbrook on this team, how do you think that could play out?
I mean, they need, like, looking at their bench unit, they really don't have a guy that's like, I don't see a guy who's gonna like be a leader on that bench unit in terms of scoring the ball. They're just that the half court offense kind of looks concerning. I mean, outside of like Julian Strawther's gonna go out there and he's gonna hit some threes for you. And I think P. Watt plays good defense, but even his offensive upside isn't like crazy. So I'm just concerned about their depth, obviously. I mean, I know they have probably arguably the best starting lineup in the NBA, and it might have gone, and I think that took a step back as well. And I think their depth also took a step back. So I'm a little less confident in the Nuggets than I would have been like going into last year. And I think Russell Westbrook doesn't really kind of move the needle that much for me in terms of this team, unfortunately.
I think the biggest thing they did this offseason was re-sign Jamal Murray, because just having him inked before the season starts, you kind of dodge a lot of questions about what his future is going to be, obviously, there in Denver. And that is a huge thing for a guy like whose career relies on, playing, like, just to have him settled and knowing that he's going to be here for the next 4 years. He can kind of like just focus on playing now rather than have to worry about what's going on with his money.
Yeah, it's certainly a nice thing to have that done heading into the season. Last year, we talked about it with Jamal Murray earlier in the offseason about how he played, very well during the regular season, put up a lot of career numbers. In the playoffs was kind of inconsistent against the Minnesota Timberwolves. But regardless, him and Jokic, that duo at the end of games, there's no duo I'd rather have at the end of games than Murray and Jokic because of their chemistry and the championship experience. My question, it's obviously the depth, but I also, so we can go to something that we hope to see from this team. I would like to see another or maybe he hasn't had one of these yet in the regular season. I'd like to see an outstanding regular season from Jamal Murray. And I would also like to see another guy, a guy we love to talk about, Michael Porter Jr., emerge his role a little bit because he's a player, who I think can show a lot more. He was very efficient, to start his career. He has the lingering back injuries that make it kind of tough. But, if Michael Porter Jr. can emerge into a star level player, I think he's capable of 18 points, 8 rebounds per game on, 40% from 3 on high volume. If they can get that, it 0.7 assists per game, right?
Yeah.
If they can get that from him, it helps things out so much for this Nuggets team because, Nick, you're right. Christian Braun, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, they're all just project guys at the end of the day. Christian Braun has, played, very solid the first couple of years, but I don't know if it's enough to be a starting caliber player on a team that is going to want to compete for another championship.
No, that's right.
This depth was a concern last year. It's going to be a concern this year. Like, we all saw it when Jokic was off the floor, how bad the Nuggets were. Like, they needed to do more than just sign Russ and Dario Saric.
I will say, though, the bench is a lot better now than it was last year because now you have, their bench was basically filled with inexperienced players besides, a Reggie Jackson who was solid, here or there. But now you've got Russell Westbrook, who really wants to win at this point of his career, and you've got Dario Saric, a veteran, around some of these other, young players. I think that it will go better this year when Jokic is off the floor. They shouldn't consistently be giving up leads like they were last year. Russell Westbrook, he had a very bad playoffs, but in the regular season, still one of the best backup point guards in the league. He still has a lot of talent. And I think it could fit in. We could see some interesting lineups. I think Michael Malone is going to have to experiment a little bit, with Russell Westbrook, in case, unless he somehow randomly adds a consistent 3-point shot, which I don't think is going to happen at this point. There could be some times where they play him offensively, like in the Aaron Gordon dunker spot, where he's just, getting, alley-oop dunks, off of lob passes in the short roll by Jokic or Gordon or something. I think Michael Malone is going to have to experiment a lot to make it work, but he is a very good head coach, so I think that he could make it work. As far as their win totals, it is 52.5 games. What do you guys think about this win total for the Denver Nuggets in the regular season?
Well, obviously, Jokic keeps their floor pretty high. And I guess the question you'd have to ask yourself is, what's their ceiling then? If their floor is high, then what's their ceiling? And with the depth, it's a question mark. I think 52 is pretty accurate. I think they're going to win 50 games. I think it's 52.5. So I don't think that they make it to 53. I'm going to have to go under.
I honestly have to go over. I think they're around a 55 win team. I think after the playoffs last year, I honestly do think that Jamal Murray will come back and have an outstanding regular season that Miles is hoping for. But as their ceiling, as long as you have Jokic and Murray and you still have this great of a starting lineup, the ceiling's got to still be championship. That's still their goal, is to make the championship and to make the finals and to win it. I think realistically, if they make it to the conference finals and make it to the finals, I think that's a successful season. It really comes down to their depth, though, because I got to see it till I believe it. It was so bad last year.
It's just you have a lot riding on Christian Braun and Peyton Watson.
Yeah. But like Jackson said, in that starting lineup, I wouldn't say it's the best starting lineup in the league, but you do have Jokic, who's the best player in the world. We all can agree on that. Jamal Murray, who is very capable of finally making an all-star game this year. Maybe that'll happen.
We'll see.
Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon, great surrounding guys with Jokic. You know, they could. I talked about this with the Celtics in the last video. You know, if the Nuggets go into a series and they may have the best top four
Right.
of any other team in the Western Conference. Well, I mean, there are other teams that could be in the conversation of that, but if their top four is better than everyone else's, then, you know, a lot of times that can be enough in the playoffs, but you do need those other role players to definitely step up. Me personally, I'll go 53-54 wins, so I'll go a little bit over because I mean, Jokic, 3 MVPs in the last 4 seasons. I don't see any reason why he would decline a whole bunch from that. And I also, losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I don't think that makes them, you know, I don't think that makes them 5 games worse than they were last year. That's basically what you would be saying if you're taking the under on this.
That's where I'm at 53, 54, 55, like in that range within that 3-game span, because I'm looking at the standings from last year, and I think the Clippers won 51 games last year. I think this team has a better floor and a better ceiling than that Clippers team from last year.
That's a fair point. I have them 50 to 52 wins, and if I'm right, then you guys all got 10 push-ups.
Oh my goodness! If we lose by 1 or 2 games.
All right, you owe me 100 push-ups because.
No, I'm the odd man out.
Timberwolves were the 3 seed, baby.
Dude, Nick makes the rules. He's the referee. Like,
yeah, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Don't make me get the cane.
Last thing I'll say about the Nuggets before we move on, I mentioned at the beginning how like hard cap they kind of are. It's a similar situation with the team we'll talk about next, the Minnesota Timberwolves. But Denver, you know, with the money that they are paying for Murray, Jokic, Porter, Aaron Gordon has a $22 million player option at the end of the season. He'll decline that, or he'll either decline it or the Nuggets will just give him that extension. He's definitely worth that. You know, their depth, it's been a struggle for them to get that surrounding depth the last 2 years since they won that championship in 2023. If they do have an early first round or early playoff exit, like they had last year, because I mean, the Nuggets were the favorite in the West like the whole season, and second round loss was very disappointing. If they have something like that again this year, Michael Porter is a guy that I could very well see getting traded because I feel like he is their best avenue to getting better surrounding players.
Dude, I don't know though, because I feel like if they're a first round exit or like a second round exit, because last year it was kind of on Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray did not play very well in the playoffs, at least the second round against Minnesota. So I think if he has another bad playoffs, and if he doesn't make an all-star team, his value is an all-star player, but he's not playing like an all-star player, and he's not bringing that same value in the playoffs. So I think he could also be a guy that's kind of on the move.
He just signed that extension, though. There's no way they're going to move him now.
No,
dude, I mean, he doesn't play well.
It doesn't matter. They're going to have to eat that contract for 4 years. In a couple of years, we could be talking about that, especially if the no All-Star, but not just after he got this extension.
And Jamal was still like good in the playoffs. Like if we're saying that in the playoffs that 20 points, 5 assists is bad, then that says how good he is as a player. If we're being honest.
Well, true, but he has to. I mean, for him, it's got to be more because he is that second. Like, he's the second option on a championship contending team.
When they won that championship,
well, this was the first rough playoff because I can agree that he didn't have the best playoffs. He's
usually a good playoff player.
Yeah, he's an elite playoff player. He's one of the best, playoff performers we've had over the last few years. This is the first year where it was kind of rough. And even in like the game 7 loss to Minnesota, he had 35 points. Jokic had like 36 points. It was the other guys that really couldn't step up, and it was a guy like Porter. I just feel like he's the most expendable because you could find 3-point shooting. You can't really find the other things it's harder to find things like Murray and Gordon.